Before we begin, I just want to have full disclosure here. Yes, I was paid by Microsoft to say positive things about this game. Now on with the next PlayStation Plus review. Brothers, Tale of Two Sons. This game got a ton of praise last year with its Xbox Live Arcade debut, and while I successfully avoided spoilers, I went in with high expectations. They were exceeded. Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons is the tale of two brothers, sons of a dying father and dead mother. You know, typical indie game stuff. After a brief intro, the siblings embark on a journey to find a magic tree that can possibly heal their dad. That's honestly about it for story though. The boys encounter other stories as they go through their fantasy archetypical world. They're all just a means to an end. The goal remains the same. Now you'll hear this a lot during this review, but I'm not sure how valid this criticism is. That criticism being that each of these subplots doesn't get nearly enough screen time. I feel like that might be intentional. As I explored the world, I constantly found myself wanting to find out more about the things that I saw. Is that a mark of a good world? Or is that just lazy carrot dangling? It'll probably be different for everyone. The devil really is in the details with this game. There are so many little things to find and lots of useless interactions as well. You can see different facets of each brother's personality as you interact with people and other objects in the environment. It's an excellent example of gameplay and story integration and helps flesh out the otherwise functionally mute duo. More on that later. Honestly, you can't just talk about gameplay or just the story in Brothers. The two are tightly woven together, which is the game's greatest strength. You control each bro with an analog stick, with a corresponding trigger being their end-all interaction button. In a more complex game, this would be broken and not very enjoyable. As it stands, it'll take some getting used to using both analog sticks at the same time, but the game gives you plenty of leeway. The control scheme can often lead to the game being overly simple, but I'm not sure how valid that criticism is. Many sections are completely on rails, and many puzzles just involve pressing a single button. On the other hand, mapping everything a brother can do to a single button gives the characters an incredible amount of context-sensitive actions they can take. Because of this, they can put the player in direct control of most moments of the game, and since you don't know which one will be railroaded or not, you can't afford not to be diligent. Using a single button to control everything isn't always ideal though. The best example of this is the climbing. You grab onto things with the same button you use to jump from one thing to another. If you don't hold it down at the right time, you'll just end up falling, probably to your death. But I'm not sure how valid that complaint is. It might be intentional, as it effectively shows how difficult climbing something might be through gameplay, as well as adding a bit more tension to the platforming segment. Unfortunately, tied to the story as the gameplay is, it's difficult to talk about without going into major spoilers. So I'll just say this. The use of controls combined with the ending of this game has become one of my favorite moments in gaming, period. I guess Brothers is a puzzle game. It's what you spend most of your time doing, but most of the stuff is just press this switch and a thing happens. Or some of them don't even get that complex and just devolve into using a certain brother to talk to a certain thing. There are a few clever ones though, and I was impressed by how intuitive it all was. It takes good level design to be able to convey a complex idea without using any text. In terms of presentation, the game is all over the place. The design is great, but the models are fairly low resolution. There's a lot of pop-in too, despite this. The game goes without music frequently too, and when it does use music, it often uses this weird singing sound that I think is meant to tug at the heartstrings, but didn't do anything for me. There is voice acting, technically, but in the same way that The Legend of Zelda or Mario has voice acting. There's a bunch of babbling, sort of like Sims or Animal Crossing, something like that. Actually, speaking of Animal Crossing, this game actually kind of feels like a long-lost GameCube game, or at least GameCube era. At the time, dual analog sticks would still be relatively new enough for a gimmick like controlling 2 characters at once with them. The character designs suit the era as well, and the experimental nature of the game common during the GameCube age. Brothers isn't going to work for everybody. It's a surprisingly dark game, but I think what's going to throw more people is the value versus price. The game costs $15, and will give you maybe 2 to 3 hours of gameplay, with not really much reason to replay it either besides some fairly easy to get trophies. It's not really an example of quality trumping quantity either. The game is fairly rough around the edges, all things considered. I think the people who will enjoy this game the most are people who want an experience in gaming they can't get anywhere else, or people who want to see just how much untapped potential video games still have as a whole. If you're not interested in stuff like that, the game still has merit, but I think that it's going to be very hit or very miss depending on what kind of person you are. It's one of those kinds of games. That concludes the first month of PlayStation Plus reviews. This series was pretty well received, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I'll be reviewing next month. If you like this video, why don't you subscribe to Mikasoft Gaming? It really helps him out.